But this year, we are remembering a former Historic Santa Fe Foundation board chair, volunteer, researcher, scholar, green chili cheeseburger connoisseur, and all-around funny and lovely woman, Nancy Owen Lewis. We have 3 speakers who will share a brief memory of Nancy and present a self-selected short reading from Nancy's extensive catalog, including books like A Peculiar Alchemy, I mess this up every time. Jean's giving A Peculiar Alchemy, a Centennial History of School for Advanced Research, Chasing the Cure in New Mexico, Tuberculosis and the Quest for Health, and her upcoming book on dogs and the war effort during World War II that'll be published by School for Advanced Research. If you want to know about that, there might be some SAR staff here who could tell you about it. If you want to pre-order your copy now. And before we start, also I want to thank her friends and family for being here, and including Deborah and James Walker. It's Deborah? Deborah's here. Deborah. Okay. Deborah and James Walker. Deborah is Nancy's husband Paul's younger sister. Yes, youngest sister. Only younger, youngest, both, yeah. And then Kachina Walker is Nancy's aunt. Is that correct? Or Nancy was your aunt? Nancy was your aunt. Yes, so thank you. And I don't know if there's any other family members here this evening, but thank you for being here. So our first reader for this evening is Pete Warzel. So, and it was going to be our last reader, and we switched around the order. So I did say last but not least. Pete,
least but not least.
All right. Yeah. Pete was Historic Santa Fe Foundation's executive director from 2024 until his retirement in 2014. Sorry, I made it a very short term. 2014 until his retirement in 2024. Previously, he held executive positions in major telecommunications and entertainment companies. He now writes quirky essays, indeed, about the American West and is teaching his granddaughter to drive. So help me welcome Pete Warzel.
Oh, yeah. There's this clip.
Here we have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here you are, sir.
Thank you.
Give me your water.
No. Thank you, Melanie, for having me here. And it is really a joy to see all my old friends and colleagues. Thanks to Historic Santa Fe for inviting me back for this remembrance of Nancy. When I came to Historic Santa Fe in 2014, Nancy was not here. She had been previously, but not yet again. I first met her when Ken Stillwell arranged a lunch at the Hotel Santa Fe sometime in 2014, and she began working on me to collaborate with SAR and to publish a new edition of Old Santa Fe Today. She could work you over with an endearing smile on her face and then a laugh. And it worked. When she passed away, I wrote a short memory for the HSFF newsletter that read in part, several years ago I visited her in the SAR Press building at her office. And after a serious conversation about some HSFF governance issues, I turned to leave and saw a table lamp that appeared to show a cow inside the clear body of the lamp being raised in a beam of light to a UFO hovering above. I was certain this was a person to be reckoned with. She was, and she still is, through her writing. Nancy got her new edition of Old Santa Fe Today, the 5th edition, and worked hard to do so, acting as fact checker and editor along with Mac Watson for Audra Belmore's research and writing of the book. Ken Stillwell was our chair at the time, and he championed the project, perhaps thinking about that lunch with Nancy and me in 2014. Melanie McWhorter, your executive director, and a tough act to follow, was the tireless taskmaster in pulling all the pieces together, working on the design, and getting it all done. Then Nancy stepped up to chair the committee charged with researching and writing the interpretive panels that you see presented in the history room, part of the El Zaguán Master Plan, which in no small part was instigated by Larry Good even before he joined the board. The committee that she chaired was comprised of dedicated, serious, maybe brilliant people. And as such, it was not surprisingly a job of herding cats for her. But she did so, brought the project to order, again with an endearing smile and a chuckle. She was ill during both of those projects, incapacitated for weeks at a time, and then reappearing, smiling, ready to work. The day she walked into a meeting with her new hair showing, the scarf removed, was joyful for her and for us. Nancy left an indelible mark on this organization, all for the better of us all. It was an honor working with her, getting to know her, and being able to remember her today and all she devoted to this organization. I'd like to read one of her written pieces printed as a sidebar in her book, A Peculiar Alchemy. It gets to that sense of humor that I saw in the cow and UFO lamp in her office. And I can picture the ongoing delight she took while she was working on this piece. I can see her laughing out loud when she was working on this piece. The Return of Adolphe Bandelier. Nearly 60 years after Adolphe Bandelier's death in 1914, SAR President Douglas Schwartz discovered a letter and a small medieval kind of key in a file labeled Bandelier's Bones. From the letter, Schwartz learned that when Bandelier died in Sevilla, Spain, the school's board had paid for his burial. The key was the key to his crypt. Excited, he told board officer John Gaumeme about the discovery. Meme replied, "Doug, that's great. Bandelier should be buried here at Bandelier National Monument." Schwartz asked Booker Kelly, SAR's attorney, who was in Sevilla at the time, to find Bandelier's grave. Kelly located his remains, which had been removed to an ossuary, and helped arrange the return to New Mexico. On March 3rd, 1977, a crate containing human ashes arrived at the Albuquerque airport. Upon opening the box, reported staff member David Noble, we discovered not an urn with ashes, but a small, handsome casket. Inside was a smaller box containing bones. The casket fit perfectly inside a Spanish chest in the school's boardroom, where Bandelier remained for the next 3 years. For the National Park Service had refused the school's request to have him interred at his namesake monument. Michael Brown, I bet you're glad that still wasn't there when you were. Quote, "We have a policy that only nationally known or renowned figures can be buried in national parks," the chief counsel explained. "Well, you named the park after him," retorted Schwartz. "In reviewing Park Service regulations, Noble later discovered that although burials were restricted, no mention was made of scattering ashes. I suggested that the school cremate the bones and then scatter the ashes at the monument, he recalled. On October 16, 1980, a small group joined Schwartz in a private ceremony at Bandelier National Monument, at a spot where Schwartz found the view the most beautiful. He lifted the ashes to the wind. A century after his first visit to Frijoles Canyon, Adolphe Bandelier had finally returned. Can't you see her writing that?
Praise to you. I want to get the clip.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Pete. So our second speaker, I'll hold it up right here right now. Our second speaker this evening is Janet Stoker. Stoker worked in fundraising and membership at School for Advanced Research. She then led fundraising at the United World College, USA. Nancy and she worked together in preparing grant applications for the Resident Scholar Program at SAR. She and Nancy were also both members of the 15 Club. So welcome, Janet.
Yeah. Let's see, maybe over here because of the name tag.
Okay, got it.
Okay, good.
There you go. And just hold it a little closer.
Yeah, there we go. This is called Reading to Spot, and I heard Nancy read it, but I cannot now remember. This is, the loss of age. But, and she wrote it in November 2017. At the age of 19, Kitty Kitty was taken by a coyote as he dozed under our portal, leaving only Annabelle, who spent her days curled up in a basket by our heater. I think you need another cat, said Paul. I don't know about that, I told my husband. But he was probably right. It had been a long time since we had one that frolicked around the house and sat on our laps. Suddenly, I envisioned a lively kitten, perhaps a Maine Coon like Annabelle, who had been a Christmas gift 11 years ago from my daughter. When Paul offered to take me to the Santa Fe Animal Shelter, I accepted. I had never had a shelter cat, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But as we perused the cages in the feline section, I quickly realized there were no kittens. There were also no Maine Coons. But there was a gorgeous Siamese. I'd like to see her, I told the woman at the desk. But as she brought the cat to the visiting room, she warned us not to touch her belly. She bites, she explained. Let's keep looking, I said to Paul, who already had his eye on another cat. What do you think of this one, he asked, indicating a large white male with orange spots. He loves to purr, he said, reading the tag. In fact, he was purring to the point of trembling when the young woman brought him into our room. He seems nice, said Paul, as he tried to coax him out from beneath a chair. Then there were two smaller black cats. What do you think? Asked Paul. I think we keep looking, I replied. But a trip to the Espanola Animal Shelter also proved unsuccessful. Then, in early February, I saw a newspaper ad. Look, I said to Paul, there are kittens available on Sunday, and the shelter is waiving fees for older cats. You should go, I said, for I had a meeting that morning and a feeling about the ad. I had just gotten home when Paul arrived, lugging the cat carrier. You did it, I exclaimed, expecting to see a kitten. But out popped the large white male with orange spots, the one with the loud purr. But he wasn't purring as he fled to our clear-story windows, where he remained for the rest of the day. We named him Spot. Give it 6 months, said Paul, who had to get a ladder to get him down. By this time, I had fixed up the back bedroom, complete with pan and food dishes. It had once been our son's room, but now the back wall was piled high with boxes, which is where Spot stayed. He shied away when I reached up to pet him, but he had a good appetite, for his dishes were always empty. After 2 days, I opened the bedroom door, hoping he would explore the house, but he didn't budge. Well, if he wouldn't come to us, I would go to him. At the time, I was reviewing art history books. I grabbed them from my office and lugged them into Spot's room. Positioning myself on this bare bed, I opened Olive Rush, finding her place in the Santa Fe art colony, thankful that Jan Gilmore had written such an interesting book. "Did you know that Olive Rush loved cats?" I asked Spot, "and that she took care of Georgia O'Keeffe's cats when she was away?" And so it went. A few days later, Spot jumped off his perch and sat next to me. The next day, he waited for me. I finished the book, but decided to read the next one out in our bedroom across the hall. Spot followed me into the room. As he curled up next to me, I told him about Mabel Dodge Lujan and modernism. But by then, he was fast asleep. Gradually, I introduced him to the rest of our house. It took him 5 weeks to venture into the living room. Then one day, he jumped up on my lap. As Spot opened up, Annabelle declined. Diagnosed with cancer, she died that April. In May, at my daughter's urging, I acquired a Maine Coon kitten from a breeder near Taos. Millie became a lively addition to our household and adored Spot. Even Paul warmed to my designer cat, as he called her. But it is Spot who follows me around the house and keeps me company when I write. I was just finishing an article about the Santa Fe Art Colony when he jumped up on my desk. "Did you know that Carlos Vieira had 6 cats?" I asked. Spot gave what was now his standard response. He closed his eyes and purred. Nancy loved chocolate, but I think she may have loved cats even more. Okay, where do you want to go? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jonah. And now, last but not least, I'll put this up here. We have Laura Holt. So Laura was a librarian at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture, Laboratory of Anthropology, for 25 years and another 15 at the School for Advanced Research, where she worked with Nancy Owen Lewis to provide support for the resident scholar program as well as organizing the archives at SAR. So help me welcome Laura Holt. And then I'm going to clip you, if that's okay. I'll hand this to you. Is that comfy? Is that okay?
Okay. I'm sure that most, if not all of us gathered here, are well aware of Nancy's gift for finding unusual and often quirky stories and telling those stories lucidly, finding the connections between personalities and events, as well as the spark of humor that characterized her talks and her writing. It was Nancy's careful research, which I was privileged to assist, that enabled her to find the threads in complicated braids of events, organizations, and individuals. But it was Nancy's gift to tell these stories, some that we thought we knew, with new insights that left the reader or listener with a deeper understanding of and appreciation for the characters and their influences on our history. My reading is from an article in an edited volume titled Women, Collecting, and Cultures Beyond Europe. True to Nancy's form, the article weaves together the actions and interactions of individuals, institutions, and events for an audience not necessarily aware of, let alone familiar with Santa Fe's history. I've selected one strand from the braid of personalities and events and edited her essay for length, following one string in the braid of ideas, knowing that you here can provide the context. I encourage you to read the entire article. It's well worth it. Collecting Indian Art in Santa Fe, abridged. with apologies to Nancy for the liberty. In the 1920s, 5 classmates from Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania arrived in Santa Fe, where they quickly became part of a community of artists, writers, and intellectuals, many still reeling from World War I. 4 had served in Europe during the war: Gertrude Ely, Amelia Elizabeth White, and Martha White as volunteers, and Elizabeth Shepley Sargent as a war correspondent. Margreta Dietrich, the only one of the 5 who had married, would be a widow by the time she moved to Santa Fe. Fleeing industrialized America, these women, like other newly arrived Anglos, sought the more authentic life that Santa Fe seemed to offer, only to find it threatened by the same forces that they sought to escape. They quickly joined efforts to protect Pueblo land, promote health, and preserve its culture. They restored and lived in adobe houses and collected Indian art, not only to decorate their homes, but to foster the survival of both an endangered tradition and the people themselves. Born into privileged families, they attended Bryn Mawr, an exclusive women's college, and referred to themselves as the Bryn Martyrs, women selflessly and idealistically devoted to improving the welfare of others, as Sargent explained. Upon their arrival, Santa Fe was a city desperately trying to recreate itself. As the terminus of the Santa Fe Trail, it had once been the largest, most powerful city in the territory. When the railroad arrived in 1880, the trail ended, and Santa Fe was soon eclipsed by Albuquerque. Within the next 30 years, New Mexico's population had doubled, while Santa Fe shrank. To reverse the trend, in 1912, Mayor Arthur Seligman created a planning board and invited archaeologists Edgar Lee Hewitt and Sylvanus Morley to participate. Instead of trying to resemble mainstream America, they urged the city to stress its unique heritage, including its Spanish Pueblo Revival architecture and rich Indian heritage. The strategy seemed to work. In 1920, when Elizabeth Shepley Sargent and Gertrude Ely arrived, Santa Fe's population had increased to over 7,000. Then, in 1923, Amelia Elizabeth White and her younger sister Martha arrived from New York City. Purchasing an old adobe house on Garcia Street, they built an 8-acre estate. Finally, in 1927, free music. Yeah. Finally, in 1927, Margreta Stewart Dietrich, a wealthy widow originally from Philadelphia, moved to Santa Fe. Accompanied by her sister Dorothy Stewart, she moved into an adobe house she had purchased on Canyon Road. Upon their arrival to New Mexico, the Bryn Martyrs quickly became aware of threats facing Pueblo culture and other Indian communities, and how art was being used to revive the area. Edgar Lee Hewitt expressed concern over the decline of native arts and crafts stemming from the coming of the railroad, which flooded the Southwest with manufactured goods. During the early 1900s, Hewitt and several concerned art teachers dedicated themselves to reviving Pueblo traditions. Hewitt encouraged the wife of one of his workers, Julian Martinez, to replicate pottery discovered in a nearby archaeological excavation. Maria Martinez agreed, and her husband offered to decorate it. Pleased with the results, Hewitt offered to sell their wares at the museum. Pottery making proved a somewhat stable income, and by the 1920s, 2/3 of the households in the village included at least one potter. Painting soon proved to be profitable for natives as well. To help interpret the sites he was excavating, Hewitt commissioned Crescencio Martinez to paint images depicting the ritual cycle of San Ildefonso. These new collaborations also offered natives the opportunity to work with new mediums. Although painting on ceramics and walls had a long tradition in Pueblo culture, painting on paper was new. Martinez ultimately produced dozens of paintings and was selling them in Santa Fe. In 1918, a devastating influenza pandemic swept through New Mexico, taking a heavy toll on the Pueblo people. That same year, Elizabeth DeHuff, whose husband was superintendent of the Santa Fe Indian School, invited select students to her home for afternoon art lessons. DeHuff arranged with Hewitt to exhibit their watercolors at the Santa Fe Fine Arts Museum. The show, dance, and ceremonial drawings delighted the art colony, including Taos newcomer and art collector Mabel Dodge Lujan, who purchased every painting and sent them east, where they circulated among several galleries. Modernist artist John Sloan, who had arrived in Santa Fe in 1919, arranged to have the collection shown in 1920 at the Society of Independent Artists exhibition in New York. Art historian Bess Murphy critiqued the show and referred to it as a defining moment that helped revolutionize American modernism. As a result, the art community began to view Indian painting as an authentic American counterpoint to European modernism and its embrace of African and Asian influences. The exhibition and circulation of native artworks in various circles helped place Indian painting in the category of art rather than craft. Avid patrons, who would soon include the Bryn Martyrs, quickly embraced the new art form. In the early 1920s, proposed legislation threatened to strip the already beleaguered pueblos of thousands of acres of land. In 1921, New Mexico Senator Holm Bursam introduced a bill that would allow non-Pueblo people to claim reservation land if they could prove continuous possession for 10 years. Designed to settle competing claims over land, it threatened to transfer vast sums of their territory to primarily Anglo ranching and mining interests. When news of the bill reached the Bryn Martyrs, they launched 2 organizations to fight it. In 1922, Sargent, together with activist Margaret McKittrick, founded the New Mexico Association on Indian Affairs, which quickly garnered support from artists and writers. Meanwhile, Elizabeth White enlisted the help of anthropologists Frederick Hodge and Herbert Spendon on the East Coast to form the Eastern Association on Indian Affairs. Providing much of the funding, Elizabeth White served as secretary. To defeat the bill, the art community and patrons mobilized. Wielding art as a political weapon, they sought to introduce the public to the beauty of Pueblo culture, thereby gaining sympathy for their cause. In 1922, Hewitt, with the help of Kenneth Chapman, launched the Southwest Indian Fair as part of Fiesta. The Indian Fair goal was to encourage Native artists to return to traditional arts, to educate the public about the Indian arts and crafts, and to provide a market for their work. That same year, Elizabeth White opened Esau on Madison Avenue in New York. In contrast to the traders who encouraged Indians to make cheap souvenirs for the tourist trade, she promoted art. An advocate of Indian chic, as it became known, the shop served as an extension of the Southwest vision Elizabeth White had cultivated. She sold well-made collectibles like Indian jewelry and home furnishings, including Pueblo pottery lamps and Indian baskets that she used as trash receptacles, including imposing her own usefulness for the baskets. Esau was also the first store to feature Pueblo watercolors. Her goal was not to make a profit, which it didn't, but to develop a market for Indian art that would benefit both artists and their communities. The Bursam Bill was defeated in 1923. Oh, thank you. Oh, by the way, there are no copies of this in town. I had to interlibrary loan it through the Laboratory of Anthropology Library.
So, as you know, one of the important things that we do at Historic Santa Fe Foundation is care for both of these historic homes. And there's something that I missed in this, in telling you the stories, were some of the interesting things that if you look around, like we redid this fence this year and the other fence, and all of the volunteers, including Miles and John Gregory, who's not here this evening, received at least, oh, John, look, there's John. John is our world record holder for the amount of hook fin references that have been made outside of El Zaguan while painting a fence. It was 19, John, right? 19. And then we're going to be doing the front wall in about a week. So Jacob and then we'll be taking on that task. And then one other big accomplishment, while not Jacob's most important accomplishment this year, we redid the Zaguan. He oversaw that with some hired contractors. And then we rebuilt the wall, so thanks to the board, too, for getting behind some of those capital campaign and maintenance projects that we need to do. The wall was falling in, and it's beautiful. So if you look out back, it's gorgeous. And then one of Jacob's big accomplishments this year, which we did not have success with a company that we hired, was catching 9 squirrels. And I'll let you know that he took them all 10 miles away at least, because we found out that's how far you had to go so that they wouldn't come back. But he took them all to the same place, so they're reunited with their families. So we do lots of projects here. We take care of both of the buildings, but we couldn't do it without all of you. And people like Nancy Owen Lewis, who was so pivotal with this organization, and then our current board and our volunteers and all of our members and donors. So thank you all very much for being here. And now go get some food. Before you leave, there's a little more food in there, and then enjoy the garden. So thank you very much.